Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast Why You Do What You Do. The podcast that talks about human development and psychology to maybe help you figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. Today we're going to be talking about trends in late life work and retirement. We've been talking about, late life and retiring and things. So, let's look at that. Most adults who can retire do retire. And that's most, certainly not all. And with increasing longevity, they spend more time in retirement than in the past. And again, that's not everybody, that's most people. In all countries, elderly people are a small proportion of the workforce. So everywhere there are old folks who either choose to or have to still work. And the percentage decreases with age. And that's just a gimme. You might still try working. You might feel like working in your 65, 70, 75. Chances are by the time you're 80, you're probably not feeling like working. But like I say, there are some people who do. I've seen them. So, again, everybody's unique and has their own opinion and own ways. So, there might be some elderly people still out there working who enjoy it. Older men are more likely to work than older women. And that's because they say older men sometimes identify themselves with their work. So they feel like if they retire, they lose some of their virility, their manliness, if you will. But there are some who just can't wait to retire, especially if you had a physically hard job like my husband. And, there are some women who've had physically hard jobs, nurses, daycare workers, people work in nursing homes and things, I guarantee you, they get physically wore out. I mean, I messed my knee up and my arm up working in a nursing home. I messed my back got trashed in a daycare. I ended up with 4 slip discs. Now I have degenerative disc disease, so, physical jobs, when they found out in 2004 I had osteosclerosis in my pelvis. And the doctor told me, you can't work physical jobs anymore. You can't. You're going to have to switch to a desk job or, you're going to break your bones. So I had to. The women's economic activity, especially in developing countries, may include occupations that are hard to document. Because women are pretty resourceful. If we can't find work or can't do work that people have, like I say, the last boss I had, she was a really nice boss. But it was physically hard on me to sit in that chair all day. And she got me a nice chair with back support. She was great. Love you, Sneeda. But, it was hard for me to sit there all day and then reach down and put stuff in file cabinets because my back was getting so bad. My knees were getting, bad. So it was just physically too demanding for me to be able to actually drive the car to work and back and still work. I was having back spasms on the way home and pulling over on a busy road and, people, are you okay? You okay? Do we need to call an ambulance? I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm just having a back spasm. I need to ride it out. And then my husband tried to, drive me to work for a few weeks and back, but that didn't really work out because sometimes he'd have to stay late. Then I'd end up, staying late and being in more pain because, I had to be there longer waiting on him. So that was not working out. So it just came to the point, and like I said, my mother was like, why don't you just quit? Because she had a heart attack. And at first, she couldn't even put her own clothes on. I was helping her put, her unmentionables on because she just couldn't. And then I was helping her with laundry and stuff. And she's like, quit work, stay, help me. I'll pay you, more than what your boss is paying you. And so I agreed to do that. And then, like I say, my mom passed away and, 2 months later. So, I knew I couldn't go back to a job and I didn't want to, try and take on stuff at home that I couldn't do, if I felt bad or whatever, because I didn't want, people to be upset. So I started, working on, I had started a ministry, years before, so I started working on that more. I could do that for an hour a day. And then there was a charity we started, and I worked on that, my creative stuff. And so, I worked as I could. And a lot of women do that because they have children and things. I applied for disability, didn't get it. I forget how many times I applied, and then my insurance company applied for me. And then finally I got a lawyer, and we went to court, and I got hold of a judge who, I don't know whether he's a woman hater or what. I was told by the lady lawyer that, it's a good old boys club up there, and they don't like to give it to women. But, he accused me of paying the doctor to say I had everything wrong with me that it did. And it's like, I'm a Medicaid patient. Where am I getting this money from? Okay. But anyway, a lot of women do what they can do to bring in some money. Especially if their husband just doesn't make enough money, or if they don't have a husband, they do what they can do. I worked with a lot of women at one of my workplaces. They had side hustles. They would do crochet. They would, make kids' clothes and sell them, and, stuff that they could do, So a lot of women do that, and that's hard to document. And I'm not going to say it's because women don't file their taxes, because we do. A lot of us do. There might be some. There's always some. I'd say like 2 out of 50. There's always somebody doing the system wrong. But like I said, I used to go sit up there at the neighborhood place to get my, SNAP and healthcare stuff. And like I said, you can look around. 48 of us were there because we belonged there and we needed the help. And there'd always be 2. It seemed like. So that's what I say. There was 50 seats, and it'd always be full. They turn people away sometimes. But there'd always be like 2 people there who was on their phone. Oh, girl, I'm here getting my benefits. Wearing the apple bottom jeans, and the gold jewelry, and their man dropped them off in the Cadillac Escalade. So you're wondering, well, you guys are either not too savvy financially, or you don't need to be here. So like I say, there might always be, Republicans like say all these people scamming. Like I said, there might be 2 out of 50. You want to find out who the scammers are, put them in the neighborhood places. Put them in the places where you go and have a look at the folks, because those of us wearing our Walmart clothes, with our head down, trying to not be seen, we belong there. The other folks who are making a big show of themselves, with their gold jewelry and their fancy clothes and Escalades, they probably don't need to be there, is all I'm saying. So there may be people who don't document their work, but I do, and you should, because that way you can get tax refunds, and that way you can be paying into Social Security, which you're going to want when you do get, old enough to retire. So there are benefits to paying your taxes, folks, such as subsistence farming and taking in laundry. And there are folks in Africa and other places, Asia, that they farm for their living. They have to in order to eat. So, that's just a fact of life in those places. And then taking in laundry is not really something that's done anymore. I'll never forget, we moved into this house, and the lady next door, the lady who used to live here before us, took in laundry and did sewing for people. And the lady next door, had evidently some entitlement issues, because she'd come over to the fence and she goes, "Oh, do you take in laundry?" And I'm like, I thought maybe she meant like, did I sew and like stuff, because no one had ever suggested. I said, if it needs to be or whatever. And she goes, "Oh, good, I'll bring some of my husband's shirts." And I'm like, what is she talking about? And she come over with it, and she goes, "Here." And I said, well, "I'm sorry." I said, "I guess I misunderstand what you're asking me. What are you asking me?" And she goes, "Well, do you wash laundry for people and do sewing for people?" I was like, "Well, no, I don't." I said, "I barely have time to get my own laundry done. I work and I can get it." She goes, "Oh, you work?" She goes, "I didn't, you young women and your work." And I'm like, and I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Well, the lady who used to live here did laundry for us, and sewed for us. So now I guess we're going to have to find a laundromat." And, I'm thinking, well, okay, you're not going to make me feel guilty for not washing your laundry and sewing for you. I can't even do my deal, much less yours. So evidently in the past, That was a thing. But I've not heard so much now of anyone doing that. Women in developed countries are often more likely than men to work part-time. And, I worked part-time for years and years for the simple fact I had 3 kids. And, I was a single mom. So, there needed to be somebody to supervise things. We tried having a neighbor look, and that didn't work out so good. The boys were not exactly, listening and things. So there were some incidences where I felt like I could not work full time. I had to be here, to make sure things were going on right. So I would schedule the work, after at one point I had a class in the morning. So I would schedule my work hours, from 11 to 3. And that way, by the time the youngest one was getting off the bus, things, I'd be just about home. So, so you do what you got to do, because you don't want to leave your children alone to raise themselves. I know I was left alone a lot. My mother worked nights, so she slept during the day. So from the time we got home, I was in charge. I had to feed and give drinks, and my sister was 5 years younger than me, so there were occasionally diaper and potty issues. So, yeah, until she got up around dinner time to feed us dinner, I was in charge. So, that happens unfortunately a lot, with single mothers, that the oldest kid's got to be in charge a lot. And, if our governments were more accepting of single mothers, and single fathers even, and would realize it would behoove our country to allow parents to work hours, maybe 6 hours instead of 8 hours, and give them benefits so that you could drop your kid off at school, then go to work, and then get off work and go get your kid. So, that would be the best thing for everybody, where there would be money coming in, to the house, but also you would have some of the needs taken care of, assistance. And let's face it, if you get SNAP, like I used to get SNAP when my kids were younger, it's not paying for all your groceries of a month. Any person who assumes that has never been on SNAP, and they're living in a protective bubble of money and don't know reality. Because, I got $300 a month. Do you think $300 a month covered all of our groceries for a month? No. That might have gotten us about 2 weeks worth of groceries. After that, it was on me to get those groceries. So, a little bit of help is nice. But it's certainly, you think your tax dollars are paying for all their stuff. No, it's not. It's really not. I guarantee you. Having been on that, I can tell you, no. It's supplemental nutrition, yeah. That's all it is supplemental. Because it's going to get you, mostly what I bought with mine was meat. Because I couldn't afford to buy meat unless it came in a small can. That was too much, I could buy most of the rest of the stuff, but when you start looking at prices of meat, and you're making about that an hour, you're like, well, I worked an hour for this meat, so is that worth it? So supplemental nutrition programs are a good thing, and I think for single parents that should be a consideration. I don't know, that might impact marriages, I don't know. But, like I say, anyone who thinks that it's covering all of their food needs is not living in reality. Whether older adults can afford to retire generally depends on whether a country is rich or poor. And that kind of goes without saying. If you live in a very well-to-do, industrialized country, people are making money. And they can probably save money and pay into retirement plans and can afford to retire. If you're living in a third world country, You're probably not making that much, and when you get a certain age, you're probably still, excuse me, I'm having an allergy day today. You might have noticed this already. Itchy nose, sneezing, coughing. But if you're not making any money when it comes time to retire, of course you're not going to be able to probably retire, and you're probably going to have to think of some other way to bring money in. In industrialized countries, workforce participation rates for men aged 65 and over range from less than 3% in Belgium. So the Belgian folks, they're retiring and taking it easy, to more than 35% in Japan. And generally, they live longer than we do. So it might be by choice that they're like, hey, I'm not feeling old yet. I'm going to still keep working. But most countries have participation rates less than 10%, and that's most countries. And that's because, excuse me, oh my gosh, bless me. But, most of us do want to retire at some point. We've worked hard, a lot of us, and, we look forward to being able to take a breath and rest and let our body heal up a little bit so we can enjoy our old age and hopefully not tear up too much. In the United States, about 17% of older men and 9% of older women were in the workforce. So, that's still a pretty small amount, but that shows that a lot of people just they aren't ready to retire once they hit 65. It used to be a thing, get out the door so young folks can come in. But now, not necessarily. Older folks might be like, I still feel like I'm good. I want to keep going. I'm good. So, the men, mostly in managerial, professional, technical, or production occupations. The older guy, he knows stuff. There's a story. My husband, the other day, he works on tractors, and this guy brought this thing in, and it wasn't starting right, didn't sound right or everything, and he's like, oh, that's the starter. You get a bad starter, you need to fix it. Well, a younger guy comes along behind him and says, no, I think it's this. And he said, well, that's a big tear down, and that's a big part, and that's expensive, and if you're wrong, the customer's going to be pretty mad. And he's like, yeah, well, I'm gonna call our sales rep guy, the guy that, sells these particular things. He's called the company, to find out, and described it to him. And the company told him, yeah, sounds like you get a bad starter. So that guy wouldn't even come back and tell my husband that he was right. He had another guy come and tell him, yeah, you're probably right. Go ahead and fix that and see if that works. And of course he did, and it did work. So, when a guy's been on the job for over 30 years, he knows stuff, from experience. He knows what he's doing. Whereas these younger fellas coming in, they just know what they learned, and if it doesn't fit inside that box, then they don't know it. So, a lot of older men decide to stay in their job because they become the old guy, the guy, the go-to, that people know he knows what he's doing. And that's a good feeling. It gives them a sense of usefulness and self-esteem. So, a lot of men, they stay there because they feel like they're needed and they're appreciated. And the women mostly in the clerical and service jobs. A lot of us had to learn to type. My mother made me take a typing class. I didn't want to take a typing class. I wanted to take another class. But she made me take a typing class. And, it's worked out for me. So I can't hate that I did it. And when, like I said, I was told by the doctor I couldn't do physical jobs anymore, I rolled back on the clerical work, and became a receptionist. And then I became an assistant office manager and an office manager. So, it's a good thing if you learn how to type, girls. And service jobs. Again, we see, sometimes at restaurants and things, older women who are working part-time or, at stores. So, there's still women who either want to or have to work. And, sometimes that's just reality for folks. The pattern is quite different in most of the developing world. where large proportions of older people continue to work, mostly on farms. And like I say, for underdeveloped countries, and if that's all you got going on, and you need to work on that farm to eat, you need to grow your own food, and sometimes, things that you can use to make things so that you can sell things at market and things. So, it's not all the same for everybody all over the world. Public and private pension programs. What is itching me? And other inducements to make way for younger workers, such as the availability of Social Security benefits at a reduced level at age 62, have contributed to the trend of early retirement in many developed countries. And now, like I say, in the past, before the 50s, I think it said, that was the deal. You hit 65, you're out the door, mandatory retirement, and the younger folks get to come in and have your job. But now, like they say, you can get reduced benefits at 62. But most people can't afford to live on those reduced benefits. There's a difference for the years that you wait. And a lot of people can't take that big of a pay cut, to, live. So, the whole point of retiring is so you don't have to work at a job and kill yourself anymore. So, what's the sense of doing this and then having to go also work, So a lot of people, they won't take that early retirement. However, this trend appears to have stopped or leveled off. In the United States, the number of people 55 and older in the workforce rose by more than 8%. And like I say, that's because they reduced the rates, and you got to wait longer and longer, 65, 67, to withdraw the full amount of your Social Security. So a lot of people can't afford to take that pay cut, at age 62. Now, if you have to, you have to. Like I said, my mother's health, she had diabetes and it was getting worse. She had a bad back that had bothered her for years. So, she was out of breath a lot, and so eventually she would have a heart attack. But she was like, I don't know how long I'm going to live, so I'm going to retire now while, I can. So she did. And like I said, she only made it, 3 more years. So she, for her, I think, made the right choice. But again, everybody's different, and you need to look at your individual situation and what's best for you. Excuse me. Much larger increase than in previous years. Like I say, a lot of folks in previous years, you got your money. Now they're decreasing on you so that you can't get it till you're older. And so, like I say, a lot of people couldn't retire and take that pay cut, so more people stayed in the workforce. Possibly because the drop in the stock market curtailed retirement plans. And that was probably just one factor. Like I say, me and my husband got a little account because I said something about his 401k one time, and he said, well, why don't you start something? You get a little money. Why don't you start something? And my son, through his work, encourages them to invest through this little company that, does stock market. You can buy fractions of stocks and things like that. So I was like, oh, okay. Told my son, show me how this works. So he showed me how it works. And I started investing every time we got paid. So, I'm not a fan of what our current administration has done to my account, because it had a lot more money in it before they came in. They've decreased my money. So I'm not happy with them. But, it's getting back up there slowly as people are, realizing that the world does go on even with so-and-so in charge. We still have life, so. Men are more likely to retire early than women. And that's usually because men have worked physical jobs, and there are more men, and like I say it because there are women who work men's jobs. We all know that, but more men work men's jobs, and it's physically hard on them. Like I say, my husband's got a bad back. He's got bad hips, arthritis everywhere. He can't wait to retire. And I've tried to get him to take a desk job because he's got an impingement on his spinal canal, and the doctors were kind of all for it. But like I say, he's doing his thing. I can't make him choose to be easier on himself. But I wish I could. Older black men are less likely to remain in the workforce than older white men. And like I said, you deal with your feelings, I'm going to deal with my facts. Often because of health problems that force them to stop working before normal retirement age. Excuse me. And we all know the disparagement in, healthcare and in health itself, that black folks are more likely to have heart issues and things. So, this is science. I'm not prejudiced. Trust me, I'm not. I can't be prejudiced of anybody because I'm multi-ethnic. So, whatever's out there is in me. So, that's not happening. Those who do remain healthy tend to continue working longer than white men. So, see, there we go. Those who stay healthy will stay in the workforce longer. For many, American retirement is a phased phenomenon involving multiple transitions out of and into paid and unpaid work. So, a lot of people just don't retire cold turkey. Man, I wish I wasn't having an itchy allergy day. Everybody's been mowing grass. I'm allergic to chlorophyll, so yeah, I'm not having, a lot of fun here, with this. But like I say, a lot of people, I knew a woman who made jewelry, and I make jewelry too. I haven't done so much here lately for the simple fact that my jewelry case is like buried behind a recliner and everything, and it's just too much to deal with right now. But I still make jewelry, and I still sell jewelry upon occasion. I just do it here, in little pieces in my dining room here, my office. So, but I know people who do that. They, go to yard sales, sell stuff on the side. I have pages, on Facebook, and I show stuff on YouTube, Patreon, where I, try to sell my arts and crafts and books and things. So, a lot of people do work after they retire, so that, they feel like they're doing something, or they, trying to bring some money into the household. Like I say, everybody's situation is different, so not everybody's going to be the same, but, some of us enjoy the things we do. Some retire into bridge jobs, new part-time or full-time jobs that may serve as a bridge to eventual complete retirement. And now that's what my husband always said he was going to do. He said when he got old enough to pull out his 401k, he was going to do it, and he was going to get a part-time job and work that part-time job until he could collect his Social Security. Well, the time came, he didn't do it. So there we are. But anyway, a lot of people do that. A lot of people pull out their retirement or, their pension when they can, and then work part-time. The joke is a Walmart greeter. But do that until you can collect your Social Security, your full amount, and can, live on that. So some are semi-retired. They keep doing what they were doing before, but cut down on their hours and responsibilities. And I did that for a while. I was still, running the ministry, running the charity, and I just had to cut back on my hours. Well, eventually it got to the point where I just couldn't even put enough in to make it work right. So I had to quit. But, that's a whole nother animal. A poll of 805 men and women aged 50 to 75 found that 40% were working for pay in retirement or plan to do so. So that's a pretty big number. Almost half the folks, once they retire, do something, as work, for pay or for volunteers sometimes. So a lot of us, like to stay busy. We don't want to, do nothing like some people do. People who continue to work after age 65 or 70 usually like their work and do not tend or find it unduly stressful. So if you're finding your job stressful, you're a lot less likely to retire than someone who really loves their work, and that's just common sense right there. They tend to be better educated than those who retire and are more likely to be in good health. So people who have higher up kind of jobs, like the doctor that I used to go see, that I used to take the kids to, he was up in his 80s and still practicing. And it's like another doctor that I took one of my kids to says he's still practicing. He was practicing when I was young. So, he clearly liked doing what he was doing and he didn't want to retire. Now, he has eventually, retired. I think he was pushing 90. But, a lot of folks who have jobs like that, they feel needed and they feel like they're going to keep going as long as they can. And so, health also plays a part. I used to see a doctor who died in his 60s because he had a heart attack. He wasn't taking his own advice about, staying in weight and healthy. So, health does play a part. If you want to live long and work up into your 60s, 70s, you need to be healthy. More than half, 54%, of older workers say they are in very good or excellent health. And, that kind of makes sense. If you're still working, chances are you are going to be healthy. As compared with 32% of non-workers the same age. So again, if you retire early, chances are your health does play a part in that. So, there are definitely smaller number of retirees who report that they're in good health. And the workers were almost 3 times as likely to say they expect to live another 10 years. And that's because they felt good and they were healthy. Again, that just goes without saying there. They also tend to be more active during their leisure time than retirees. Because again, they're still feeling good and healthy. So again, that just makes sense. Everybody's different. And if you're feeling good and healthy, then you're going to keep doing stuff. So, that's the trends in late life work and retirement. That's where I'm going to leave you for today. Hope that helped you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. Please like and share this educational program so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. Thanks for watching or listening. That's all for now. Until next time.